So how many counterspells should you play inside a cEDH deck? Well, that is the question we're going to try to answer inside this video. The method we're going to do is looking at individual decks, like this one, then look at the actual win rate that got, which is 66.67 in this current tournament, and then go and count the number of counterspells inside this deck. So we have Force of Negation, Pact of Negation, Force of Will, Swan Song, Mindbreak Trap, Fierce Guardianship, Flush the Storm, An Offer You Can't Refuse, and Red Elemental Blast, and you could also count Deflecting Swat in some discussions. And then we do that for more tournament entries, looking at the win rate of that individual tournament entry, and look at the amount of different counterspells that deck had. And that will create this. What you're looking at is a heat map that is showcasing density. So the more black you have in an area, the more density you have, the more white, the less density. So over here you have white, no density, here black, the highest density, and a little bit of a gray area with a little bit more compared to others. So for example, over here we have one deck that scored a 100% win rate with, if you go all the way down, something between, I think that's like 7 or 8 counterspells. But the highest density is around here, just above, somewhere around 11 to 12 counterspells. And you can see a small concentration inside this region. And then it starts to like tune out. But you can see over here that you have some zeros that is performing pretty okay as well. But we probably need to answer a very important question here. What is actually a counterspell? Force of Will, clear example. Actual counterspell, a better example. Mindbreak Trap is actually not a counterspell, but it acts like a counterspell. We also have some weak variations, like Lapse of Serenity. So I would like to emphasize that we're not looking at the power level of various counterspells, we're just looking at the density, how many counterspells you're playing and what that leads into. And as you can see, mono white actually has a few counterspells. Even red green, counter target blue instant spell. You have burnout, counter target interrupt spell if it is blue. Basically what we're trying to figure out is how good can you actually interact with the stack with various tricks. Ignoring if the counterspell is actually good or if it's awesome. Just looking at the density. However, if you look here, you see that you have 0 and then you have like 1, 2 and 3 and then 4 and 5. You see, when you're playing like mono red, you're usually gonna end up with 2 to 4 counterspells because that's the amount of good red counterspells you actually have. Red Elemental Blast, Pyroblast, T-Belt's Trickery, so to say. And then maybe Burnout. The same thing with mono white. You can sometimes get one mono white deck that is actually playing Manatite, for example. But then when you get to a little bit of a higher count, you're reaching that area over here, we have something around 10 to 15 counterspells basically. But this chart is a little bit tricky. And it's hard to really say something just looking at it like this. So that is why I would love to show you this chart. But here I would love to give a shout out. You see, I got some help from another data enthusiast, DATATOG. He helped me brainstorm for this project and with some calculations. He has his own project where he is looking into changes in the top performing cEDH deck over time. And he is posting his findings usually on Reddit, but also on Twitter. Link in the description below of the video if you want to take a look at his projects. And he is the person who basically came up with the idea you see here with this chart. And here you can see a pretty good picture that is honestly kinda easy to follow. So it starts really low here at a very low amount of counterspells. It climbs up when you increase it a little bit, and then it climbs even higher when you reach this point, and then it starts to go down. I would like to explain this. So this is very long and this is a little bit shorter. The shorter they are, the more sample size we have and a stronger indication that this is the correct result. So this being a little bit spread out means that it's less trustworthy, where this is more trustworthy. So this blue dot could range a little bit more up and down compared to how this blue dot could range up and down. So first we have the overview of the heat map, and then we have this that is showcasing a much more detailed version compared to this. And the answer to the video question is basically all the way down there. That's the amount you should try to theoretically aim for. But I actually think that might be the wrong way of actually looking at it. Think like this: if the goal is to hit somewhere around 10 to 14 counterspells, because that's the area that received the highest kinda win rate, then think like this. Let's say that you have 95 cards currently inside your 99 and you need to climb up to 100. You need to add 5 more cards. And you currently have something around 7 different counterspells. You could easily add 5 more counterspells and climb up to perfect 12. Now you've hit your mark and you have 100 cards inside your 99. But let's say you have 15 counterspells currently inside your deck and you want to add 5 more, which would take you to 20. This wouldn't be recommended according to the data that we have observed so far. Another way to look at it is this. Now this happens quite often. Someone is recommending a card for your commander deck and you go, yeah, that's a great card, but what in the world am I gonna cut for it? Let's say you have 16 counterspells inside your 99 currently. Now you could cut one of them and climb down toward 15, getting closer to that recommended mark that is somewhere around 10 to 14 kinda. Or you could say 10 to 15. We are often trying to figure out what cards to cut for other cards and trying to figure out the ratio, so to say, on various things. And I hope that this video has showcased some directions and recommendations for how you should think when you're trying to figuring out that ratio of things you should have, and also trying to figure out the focus direction of what your deck is going to have. If you want to play a control deck, it might not be recommended to fill it up with a ton of maybe 20 or 25 counterspells of various sorts. But it's also not recommended to completely avoid counterspells either. You might need a few, you just don't need that many. In the future I plan to do this for stacks, lands, wheels, value engines, etc. as well, to get a good picture of the ratio you could theoretically try to aim for, how cEDH decks should look like and if archetypes actually works, etc. In any case guys, thank you so much for watching the video.